Trevor Sikkema, he is really smart. He's going to prove it. I'm putting pressure on him. NFL draft analyst for Pro Football Focus, their lead draft analyst. And you can go and watch there and listen to and assess their mock draft. Pro Football Focus mock draft simulator. Go to pff.com/mock. Trevor Sikkema joining us on the program. All right. If you had to pick a quarterback who wasn't going to work out, who would it be?
Oh, man. We're starting off with an absolute fastball here. That's good. By the way, I forgot to do this because I was excited last time that I was on, but 5'11", 170. Just had to say that.
Right.
A quarterback that I think wouldn't work out. I'm a little worried about Jayden Daniels. I am. I think that there is a infatuation with what he can do as a runner, but it's not exactly what every running quarterback brings to the table, right? First and foremost, I think he has to protect himself, right? If you're going to make the most out of that rushing ability with him, you've got to be able to protect yourself a lot better than how he protected himself. Even last year, I mean, it's like this guy was on a WWE highlight film getting thrown off of a cage sometimes when he was running and scrambling for first downs, and it's just not going to work at the NFL level. We've even seen that with guys like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen have to protect themselves a little bit more. And so I'm a little bit worried about that with the durability. And then I think with Daniels, his offense at LSU was a lot of throws outside the numbers to the sideline. And that can still exist at the NFL level. But when you look at how you really have a ton of success in this league, you've got to be able to make defenses defend every blade of grass, if you will. That includes over the middle of the field. And he just does not do that a lot. There's only been 30 passing attempts that he has over the middle of the field out of the 400 that he attempted last year. He just doesn't do it very often. So that's something that he's going to have to kind of learn how to do to really become that worthy number 2 overall pick, as we kind of assume that he's going to be that number 2 overall pick to Washington. And then I think the scrambling ability too. A lot of people look at him and say, oh, look at how athletic he is. Look at how good of a rusher he is. He's going to be this great scrambling on the run type of quarterback. He doesn't do it very often. In fact, he had less than half the attempts on the run outside of the pocket last year than even Michael Penix Jr. did. And Michael Penix Jr. is known as this pocket between the tackles type of a quarterback. And he had more than double the scrambling throws that Jayden Daniels had. So I like Daniels a lot, but it feels as though we're looking at some of his natural gifts and just thinking that he's already there in terms of making those types of plays at the NFL level. And those are still things that he has to get better and even evolve at in order for him to really be that caliber of a quarterback at the pro level.
For not expecting a fastball, you turned on it pretty well there, Trev. Just saying.
That's good.
Well
That's
done.
good. That's good.
Least doubt about what quarterback?
I think Caleb has to be the answer here, right? I mean, I look at these other quarterbacks in this class, and there's a reason why he is the number 1 overall pick. Now, I get it. It's not like he's a perfect prospect, but look at Trevor Lawrence. I mean, when he was coming out in his class, we felt like he was the perfect prospect, and yet there are still things that he has struggled with and needed to get better with at the NFL level. And so why not look at Caleb Williams and just look at the unbelievable arm talent, instincts, backyard playmaking ability, how he can play outside of structure, how he deals with pressure, how he can become that Superman every single play. I know some people look at that Superman complex as a little bit of a negative there from him, but that is also what gives me the most confidence that he can make it in this league, right? I think safe part of that question is tough to answer because I could tell you guys that could be backups in this league for 10 years, but they're not going to perform at the level that a Caleb Williams or even a Drake May, a Jayden Daniels, a J.J. McCarthy are demanded, I should say, to perform at. And I think that Caleb gives me the most faith that he's going to be able to do that. When you look at the plays within structure where he wasn't moved or pressured, that time to throw average, it's normal. It's like 2.61. It's the same as every other quarterback out there. In fact, it's a little quicker than it is with some of these guys. It's those Superman plays where he got out of the pocket and I felt like in the back of his head, he says, ooh, if I don't score 50 today, my team ain't winning. And I think that it's hopefully going to be a little bit better for him at the NFL level. And just so the overall talent, the playmaking ability, he's number 1 on my big board. He's been number 1 wire to wire for a reason. I've got to go with Caleb Williams.
All right, let's go at positional value. If I said you can have the best tight end or the best wide receiver, but we're looking at positional value, why is it that Brock Bowers is maybe going to be 10th whereas Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors, they're going to be taken ahead of him. If Brock Bowers is a generational talent, then doesn't it make sense? I can pay him less with his position than I can these wide receivers?
Yeah, and I think that's obviously a lot of parts of the conversation that you're having of where do you draft a tight end. We had this conversation with Kyle Pitts as well, because he's sort of that guy that you looked at and you're like, all right, well, he's not a traditional tight end. You're not going to play him in line a ton. And that's the same story with Brock Bowers. He's 6'4", 240 pounds, right? He's not going to sit on the line of scrimmage, and you're not going to ask him to block 5 technique, 6 technique defensive ends. Like, it's just not going to happen. So in reality, you're projecting him more. The value that you're going to get for him, that return on investment, is going to come as a wide receiver. And even if I were to look at Brock Bowers in this class, I would probably stack him up as wide receiver 3 or 4, right? So where he's getting drafted around, or sometimes even a little bit behind Rome Odunze as that wide receiver 3, to me, that's right in line. Like, to me, that's right in line with the value that he's going to bring you for your team. I think that Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors specifically, those wide receivers, to your question, they just naturally get involved in the offense more. Now, that doesn't take too much away from what Bowers did, because we saw at Georgia, he was an ultimate weapon for them, especially after the catch. But I think that when you're stacking him up, specifically against these really good wide receivers at the top of the class, those guys win more individually through their separation and their routes than Bowers does. Yeah. Bowers was a big contested catch, yards after catch type of a tight end / receiver, whatever you wanted to call him at Georgia. That's still going to work at the NFL level. But the NFL, it's bigger, faster, stronger everywhere. So just naturally, a lot of those opportunities to have those contested catches, to get those yards after catch, even though they're going to be there, it's not going to be as much. Whereas Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, even Rome Odunze, those guys are, I think, winning more one-on-ones with more nuance, with better route running. You could play them on the outside. You could play them in the slot just like you could with Bowers. And I've got more faith that they're winning more individually. So that, to me, is how we got to this point where even if you stack Bowers up as a wide receiver, he'd be wide receiver 3 or 4 in this class. But the financial part of it, obviously, you mentioned, is the interesting conversation, because if you draft him in the top 10 as a tight end, he automatically becomes like a top 10 tight end in the NFL for his contract and how much guaranteed money he's going to get with the rookie wage scale. But if you're saying that he is a wide receiver, well, all of a sudden it's a bargain if he works out. But even with that being the case, I still think that's where he would rank and stack up with those receivers.
Trevor Sikkema is the Pro Football Focus lead draft analyst joining us on the program. If Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence, and Joe Burrow were all available tonight, your selection would be?
So I'm trying to take only what I thought of these guys in college into consideration.
That's
right,
fair.
because I've actually had this conversation with some friends over the last couple of days, is who you'd take. And sometimes we've gone back and we've put Andrew Luck in this conversation as well. I think that you could probably throw him and RG3 from that draft and give you a solid 5 to choose from. But just remembering these players as prospects, I would have been taking Trevor Lawrence from what I thought of him coming out of Clemson. He would have been my choice there. And I think that it really would have been a toss-up after that between kind of what your preference is, right? Because Burrow is a different type of quarterback than Caleb Williams. I feel as though I maybe would have leaned Burrow with him coming out of college, but I try to put myself in my shoes a couple of years ago and think, man, Burrow's season was unbelievable. But it was a one-year wonder with him at LSU. It's not like we had all of these years with the Cincinnati Bengals for him to have solidified that that was going to be the quarterback that he was going to be. So I think I lean Burrow from what I thought of him after that 2021 season. But what Caleb has been able to do over the last couple of years, that might have weighed more to me. So pretty confident I would have taken Trevor Lawrence over these guys as who they were as prospects. But I think it's a pretty close debate after that.
I don't know what the philosophy is. I guess it depends on the team, but it feels like maybe the Patriots learned from Mac Jones that we do need to have a pretty good team around him. Maybe the Bears learned that with Justin Fields. Let's build a pretty good team, then get our quarterback, as opposed to get our quarterback and then build around him. And that's what I wonder what the Patriots do with 3.
I hear what you're saying, because obviously it makes sense, right? What comes first, the quarterback or the egg, right? I mean, like, that's the phrase that everybody kind of combines, and that you wonder, is it worth it to draft the quarterback early if you have the opportunity? knowing that you might waste a couple of years of their rookie contract because you got to build out the rest of the team. I still think if you have an opportunity to take a quarterback that you think will be this difference maker for you, you do it. You just don't get this many opportunities, even for a team that believes that they're in a multi-year rebuild. It just doesn't happen very often. And I mean, the Houston Texans last year are a perfect example. Sometimes it just takes a new head coach and one new quarterback to make all the difference in the world, and boom, the acceleration of the rebuild is faster than you ever thought it could be. So I think that stories like that give these teams faith that when they have the opportunity to take a quarterback, they will take one. And for the Patriots, we have talked a lot about them potentially trading down for the exact reasons that you brought up. They could draft a really good offensive lineman in this class. They could get a surefire wide receiver one. You can build out the rest of that team before you go and get that quarterback and not have to throw them to the wolves, if you will. But to me, it still doesn't make sense with where this team is. And you brought up the Mac Jones example, and I do think that that's a little bit of a, hey, did we kind of jump the gun here? The team wasn't really good. Mac wasn't really able to elevate. But I also think that the Mac Jones example is a louder voice for we have to get better at quarterback. Just straight up. For our fan base and our franchise alone, I think that's a big reason why you're going to see a quarterback, no matter what, for them at number 3 overall. I would be shocked if they traded the number 3 overall pick. I really, really would.
Great stuff. Good to talk to you again. Have fun tonight. Thank you, Trevor.
Appreciate it, DP. Anytime.
That's Trevor Sikkema. I told you he'd have some information.